Something happens to you before you're even aware of it, before language, before certainty, before you even have the ability to name what you're feeling. The world calls it trauma, bad luck, isolation, or just being different. But what you're actually experiencing is a spiritual initiation that begins in the shadows. You don't choose it, it chooses you. Long before you ever hear the term dark chosen one, you've already been marked by it. And the first sign? You've never felt like you were from here. You've never felt truly at home in this world. Even as a child, you had a sense that something was off about reality. Like there was a layer behind the layer, a secret behind the silence, and no one around you could feel it. We've been taught that being chosen means being special in a way that's easy, light, or glamorous. But the truth is so different it almost hurts to realize it. Being a dark chosen one means being cracked open by existence. It means being thrust into pain early, not as punishment, but as preparation. Because there are 7 forms this path can take, and each one is forged in fire. You don't get to escape the shadows, you become the one who walks through them. Not for the thrill, but because you were built for it. And the world, the system, the matrix, it doesn't understand you. It fears you. Because it cannot control what it cannot categorize. Let me ask you something. Have you ever wondered why your presence seems to either deeply calm or deeply disturb people? Why you've been called too intense, too quiet, or too deep for no apparent reason? It's because your energy carries remembrance. You walk into a room with the frequency of truth, and truth is uncomfortable, especially for those who are still hiding from theirs. That's the first real clue that you might be one of the dark chosen ones. You don't just live in the world, you disrupt it even in silence. The first form of the dark chosen one is the seer. This path is for those whose eyes were opened too early. You saw things as a child, truths behind people's smiles, energies in empty rooms, glimpses of futures that hadn't happened yet. You were told to stop imagining things. You were gaslit into thinking your intuition was just anxiety. But deep down you always knew. You knew when people were lying. You knew when something terrible was about to happen. And you carried the weight of knowing without the tools to explain it. But that sight wasn't a curse. It was a call. You were given the gift of spiritual vision, not to feel alienated, but to one day guide others through the darkness they can't yet see. Then there's the second form, the alchemist. This is the one who carries pain like a ritual. You've been through things that would have broken most people. You've faced betrayal, abandonment, loss, often back to back, with little time to breathe. And yet you're still here. That's not by accident. You've learned to take suffering and turn it into wisdom. You don't just survive, you transmute. You turn grief into art, heartbreak into healing, anger into fuel. You walk through hell and come back with your hands full of light. People don't understand how you do it. They think you're lucky or just resilient. But what you really are is initiated. You've earned your power the hard way. The third form is the mirror. This one is the most misunderstood of them all. You reflect people's hidden selves back to them. They project onto you. They love you too fast, hate you too quickly, get obsessed or repulsed without knowing why. It's not about you, it's about what they see in you. You trigger people just by existing. You show them their wounds, their longing, their buried rage. And you've probably spent years wondering why relationships are so intense, why people seem to either idolize or villainize you. But now you're realizing it's because you're a living mirror. You don't reflect people's masks. You reflect their truths. And that's a sacred, dangerous gift. And I want you to pause for a moment and ask yourself this. Which one of these 3 feels like home to you? Not intellectually, but viscerally. Which one made your heart beat faster, your stomach drop, your eyes water with recognition? Because that's how your soul speaks, not in words, but in resonance, in chills, in silence, in the feeling of finally being seen. But here's the deeper truth. You may not be just one. Many dark chosen ones carry multiple forms. Some evolve from one to another as life initiates them into deeper levels of awareness. You might start as the seer, then become the alchemist after a series of losses, and eventually realize you are the mirror to everyone you meet. These forms are not boxes. They are archetypes. And archetypes are alive. They move through us as we grow. The path of the dark chosen one is not a trend. It's not an aesthetic. It's not a mystical fantasy. It's a spiritual responsibility. You were not chosen because you are better than others. You were chosen because you could handle what others could not. You were chosen to carry what others collapse under, and eventually to show them how to transmute it. Not through preaching, but through presence. In the next part, we'll go even deeper. We'll uncover the final 4 forms of the dark chosen one, and I promise you, one of them will unlock something in you that you've been waiting your whole life to remember.
Click subscribe to this channel to get more profound spiritual lesson.
There's something sacred about finally recognizing yourself in a story you didn't even know was being told. When we begin to explore the final 4 forms of the dark chosen one, something begins to crystallize inside, a silent confirmation, a sense that the chaos of your life was never random, that the pain, the rejection, the strange timing of everything, you weren't being punished. You were being forged. These archetypes aren't just ideas. They are living blueprints of consciousness. They live within you. And when you name them, you reclaim them. You stop being a wandering soul and you start becoming what you were always meant to be, a living key. The 4th form is the shadow walker. You know if this is you because you've never been afraid of darkness. Not really. While others avoid the uncomfortable, the taboo, the painful, you go straight into it. You sit with the wounded. You understand the addict, the abuser, the broken, not because you condone their actions, but because you feel their distortion. You've been there. You've had to face your own demons, not once, but repeatedly. And instead of running, you learned to listen to the shadows. You learned that the darkness doesn't always come to destroy, it comes to integrate. You aren't here to bypass pain with positivity. You're here to make the descent. You've become fluent in the language of transformation because you've made your home in the underworld. People don't realize how vital this form is. Without the shadow walker, the world would rot beneath the surface, pretending everything is fine. But you bring the rot to light. You cleanse by confronting. You don't flinch. And that makes you rare. The 5th form is the silent architect. This one moves quietly, invisibly. You're not loud. You're not the center of attention, but you're always watching, always calculating, feeling, sensing, building. Your power doesn't come from being seen. It comes from what you see. You notice what others miss: patterns, energy leaks, hidden motives. You reconstruct the invisible systems that govern people's lives. You're the type to be underestimated, and that's your advantage. You don't need a crown to rule. You rule from the shadows, not out of manipulation, but because you're playing a deeper game. You're here to recode reality, bit by bit, energetically, subtly, permanently. You design new paradigms not in public, but in your meditations, your journals, your quiet downloads at midnight. And when the world finally catches up to what you already knew 5 years ago, you're already onto the next layer of the matrix. You build the future in silence. And when you speak, the world listens not because you shout, but because your words echo with encoded truth. The 6th form is the destroyer. This is the most misunderstood of them all. People think destruction is cruel, chaotic, evil. But in spiritual truth, destruction is sacred, necessary, evolutionary. If everything stayed the same, nothing would grow. If the old systems never crumbled, there would be no space for the new to rise. The destroyer's role is to tear down illusions, to burn the false temples, to call out the lies even when it costs them everything. You know if this is you because you've always had a rebellious fire inside. You've never been good at following rules that made no sense. You've challenged teachers, bosses, family traditions not to be difficult, but because you could feel the distortion. And when you tried to suppress that fire, it turned inward and burned you. But now you understand. Your fire wasn't a flaw. It was your function. You're not here to play nice. You're here to disrupt. And in doing so, you create the space for something real, something divine, something true. The seventh and final form is the oracle. This is the one who speaks the unspeakable, who channels truth not from books, but from pure knowing. You don't always know how you just do. Words pour out of you when people need them most. Visions hit you in dreams, in silence, in random moments of stillness. You've always felt like a translator between worlds, a messenger, a voice for something higher. People come to you for clarity they didn't even know they needed. And sometimes it scares you. The weight of what you carry, the responsibility of speaking what others are too afraid to. But this is your gift. You're a mouthpiece of the unseen. You don't just interpret energy, you embody it. Your life becomes prophecy in motion. And whether or not people believe you, something in them remembers the truth when they hear you speak. That's the power of the oracle. They don't convince, they resonate. And now that you've met all 7 forms, pause, reflect. Let them echo within you. Which one are you? Which 2? Which 3 live inside you, layered like ancient temples? You're not here to label yourself. You're here to remember yourself. These 7 are not paths you choose. They are paths you awaken into. They are frequencies you've always carried. And now that you see them clearly, your next step is to live them fully. The world is not changed by those who conform. It is changed by those who remember why they came. The dark chosen ones are not here to be liked. We are here to liberate ourselves first, then others. Now that you've begun to see yourself through the lens of the 7 forms, the real journey begins. Because recognizing your form is not enough. Knowing you are a seer, a destroyer, a shadow walker, these are just the keys. But the door they unlock? That's embodiment. That's mastery. And mastery doesn't come from reading, studying, or even listening. It comes from integration. It comes from walking your talk in the silence, in the shadows, in the moments when no one is watching. That's where your form becomes your frequency. That's where your presence begins to awaken others, not because you speak, but because you exist as a living truth. We live in a world obsessed with noise, with words, with visibility. But the dark chosen ones were not sent to add more noise. We were sent to be the stillness that cuts through the noise. Think about that. When you fully embody your form, your energy does the work for you. You don't need to convince anyone of your value. You don't need to argue or debate or persuade. You simply are. And in that being, you become a mirror, a trigger, a catalyst. You begin to disrupt illusions simply by remaining rooted in your truth. And that makes people feel something they can't run from, themselves. But here's the part that most people don't understand: embodiment hurts. It's not glamorous. It's not aesthetic. It's shedding. It's letting go of everything you built to protect yourself from being seen. It's having the courage to live as your archetype, even when it costs you friends, family, jobs, comfort, and approval. Especially approval. Mastery means choosing your form over your ego. It means sacrificing who you thought you had to be in order to become who you actually are. And that's terrifying. But it's also the only path to real spiritual power. Let's say your dominant form is the mirror. Do you realize the level of discipline it takes not to take things personally when others project onto you? When they fall in love with the version of themselves they see in your reflection, or when they lash out because you've exposed their shadow? Most people would collapse under that pressure, but you were built for it. Embodiment means not reacting, not shrinking, not becoming what they accuse you of. It means standing still, being the mirror, and letting the reflection do its work. Even if they never thank you, even if they hate you for it, that's mastery. Or maybe you're the silent architect. Your challenge is invisibility. How do you stay committed to your mission when no one sees you? When no one acknowledges the intricate energetic blueprints you're designing behind the scenes? Embodiment for you means trusting the unseen, trusting that the structures you set in motion will ripple outward even if no one knows your name. It means detaching from recognition and learning to find fulfillment in the impact, not the applause. That's spiritual maturity. Each form has its shadow. The seer can become paranoid. The alchemist can become addicted to pain. The destroyer can become destructive without purpose. The oracle can become arrogant. Mastery is not about avoiding the shadow, it's about owning it. It's saying, yes, this is part of my power, and I choose to direct it with intention. You stop being a victim of your form and start becoming the master of it. That's when the magic happens. That's when people change just by being near you. Not because you're trying to change them, but because you've changed yourself so deeply that your entire field vibrates with truth. Let me ask you something. What would your life look like if you stopped pretending to be anything other than what you are? What would it cost you to live completely in your archetype? And what would it give you? Because here's the secret no one tells you. The world is starving for people who are real, people who are rooted, people who are dangerous in the best way because they can no longer be manipulated, bought, or broken. That's what you become when you master your form, and you won't have to shout it. You won't need a title, a brand, a platform. You'll walk into a room and people will feel it. They won't know what changed, but they'll know something did. Your silence will say what your mouth never could. Your vibration will do what no sermon, speech, or strategy ever could. Because when a dark chosen one fully embodies their form, the world shifts. There comes a moment on the path of the dark chosen one where something extraordinary happens, not loud, not dramatic, but soul-shakingly real. The lines between the 7 forms begin to blur. You no longer ask, which one am I? Because you begin to feel all of them moving inside you, like dormant codes activating one by one. The seer, the alchemist, the mirror, the shadow walker, the silent architect, the destroyer, and the oracle, these are no longer descriptions you relate to. They become expressions of an ancient intelligence rising through your body. You become the living convergence point, the nexus of spiritual archetypes, not a role you play, but a force you are. The storm, the stillness, the signal. It doesn't happen overnight. It happens through fire, through failure, through years of wondering if you're broken, if you're cursed, if you'll ever feel whole. But what you don't see in those moments is that you're being stretched, cracked, and emptied so that all 7 forms can eventually fit inside you. And when they do, everything changes. You stop identifying with any one path and start embodying all of them, fluidly, intuitively, precisely. You become the one who sees through illusions like the seer, transmutes pain like the alchemist, reflects truth like the mirror, navigates shadows like the shadow walker, builds silently like the architect, destroys illusions like the destroyer, and speaks divine truth like the oracle all at once, without effort, without ego. This is the final convergence. And it's not about becoming superhuman. It's about becoming fully human but without distortion. You know when to be fierce and when to be silent. You know when to hold space and when to walk away. You don't react, you respond. You don't chase, you attract. You don't seek power, you are power, because you've tasted each form's essence, danced with its shadow, and chosen to wield it with clarity. You become whole, integrated, dangerous in the most sacred way. At this level, your presence alone is a message. People can feel it before you speak. They sense something in you that makes them question themselves. That's because your energy is now a frequency disruptor. You carry the chaos of the destroyer and the precision of the architect. You carry the empathy of the alchemist and the detachment of the mirror. You become the paradox, the one who walks with the divine and the desperate, who can hold light in one hand and shadow in the other, without judgment, without fear. And that makes you rare. That makes you unignorable. But let's be honest, this level of embodiment makes life intense. You'll trigger people just by breathing. You'll lose relationships that were built on your previous smaller self. You'll outgrow entire versions of your identity without warning. But you'll also begin to attract something extraordinary, your true tribe, the others like you. The ones who've also walked through fire, who speak in silence, who feel like home without ever saying why. You'll find them not by looking but by being. Because your signal is no longer just your words or your presence, it's your vibration. And those who are meant to meet you will hear it, even if they don't know how. So ask yourself now, are you ready to carry all 7? Not as a concept, but as a lived reality. Can you allow yourself to become the full spectrum of what you were sent here to be? Can you stop hiding behind the mask of one archetype and claim the full range of your spiritual DNA? Because once you do, you don't just change your life, you begin to change the field around you. Reality bends around the fully awakened, not because they force it, but because they no longer resist it. And that's the secret. You don't need to fight the world to change it. You just need to remember who you are. Every form you've ever carried, every code you've ever buried, every truth you've ever silenced. The moment you let it all rise, you become the convergence, the storm that awakens the sleepers, the stillness that calms the chaos, the signal that calls the others home. You are the storm. You are the stillness. You are the signal. And you were never here to fit in. You were born to recode reality. Now go live it.